Celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Heather Moyse, welcome to our podcast. This is a real, I've really been looking forward to this. When we first met you, you're elegant, you're beautiful, you're articulate, you're driven. Man, just like we're such fans of you as a human being. And we were talking about this earlier just before we started, but like you're the first podcast guest I'm going to call a faker. I think you're a faker. and here's why I say that. So, master's in occupational therapy. You are a 4-time Olympian, 2-time Olympic gold medal Olympian, in the World Rugby Hall of Fame. You're an author. Your book is called Redefining Realistic. Wonderful book. I skimmed it. I have to be honest with you. I bought it. I skimmed it because I've had some personal family stuff going on the last 3 weeks. And so I didn't have a lot of time to read like word for word, but I am going to go back. I love it. It's really, really good. But the reason why I call you a faker, like if you Google and get on your website, I think this is like what you list on there is like a fraction of what is really who you are and what defines you. Like you find out like I know you summited like the highest mountain in Antarctica with Canadian Armed Forces. You have the Olympian Humanitarian Award. You have like the Queen's Jubilee Medal. And apparently I just found out you have a Heather Moyse Drive street named after you. That your bank is on. I mean, but I believe I've heard, and I don't know, so I really would like you to explain to the audience, there's way more medals than 2 Olympic golds. I think, is it true there's more than 2 Olympic medals? From
the Olympics, it's just 2.
Okay.
But rugby, we have a silver from the Rugby World Cup in 2013 for the Sevens Rugby World Cup there. But that's it. No, 4 Olympics and 2 gold medals.
World championships? Yeah. Any world championships?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, someone asked me how many World Cup medals I had, and I had to go to Wikipedia, and I don't even know who updates that, but I had to go to look because I don't hold on to that stuff. So I can't even tell you. I can't tell you.
Well, not holding on to it is better than me calling you a faker. That's a way better description, by the way.
Yeah, we get usually these glass globes or trophies. I think there's a globe for like the overall, kind of the whole season winner for points and stuff like that. So they're different kind of things. But yeah, there are some World Cup medals.
So how many World Cups, just out of curiosity, do you know? Do you remember? Like roughly?
No, they're 8 World Cup races every year. And then it ends with a World Championships or an Olympics. So there are 3 World Championships and then an Olympic Games. But I have competed in 4 Olympics, but I've only competed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 seasons. So I wasn't like we talk about the Olympics in terms of like 4-year cycles and that sort of thing, but I've never actually done a 4-year cycle for bobsledding. So my first year doing it, the Olympics were 5 months later. So it really had nothing to do with bobsledding. Cause when I made the decision, I hadn't even seen a bobsled at the time, but I ended up breaking one of their testing records. And suddenly I went into that not like being like, I'm not doing this really. I'm doing this to get this recruiter off my back. I'm just going to go to the testing camp. And so I went, but because I broke a testing record amongst these people who had been training for years and who were supposed to be representing us at the next Olympics, which were 5 months later, I was like, well, wait a second. Can I actually do this? Can I learn a new sport? Can I learn to do it well? And can I learn to do it well enough in time to maybe represent my country at the next Olympics which were less than 5 months later. So for me, it was kind of like this implausible, like this far-fetched goal of, okay, yeah, that's probably unlikely, but I want to see how close I can get. 5 months time is a really cool way. It's not like at the time I was like, I'm not changing my whole life. I'm just kind of taking a little step out of it to address this challenge and see what I can do. So that was my first Olympic Games. So after that, I went back and finished my master's degree, and just thought I'd be back to normal life, normal in quotations, and I went back, finished my master's degree. But when you come fourth at the Olympics, and after 4 runs, after accumulating the time, after 4 runs, which on the Torino track was 5.7 kilometers, 3.54 miles for any, Americans who are listening. After that distance, after accumulating those times, we missed standing on the podium by 0.05 of a second.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just fourth, it was fourth by 0.05 of a second. So it was, kind of the definition of so close yet so far away. And so I was just like, okay, well, I went and finished my master's degree. I have that now. And the next Olympics are actually on home soil. So can I now, the challenge all of a sudden became, instead of just getting to the Olympics, which I just challenged myself to do and just did, last year, if I go and train for 3 years, can I actually get on the podium and win a medal for my country? Like that was like the next challenge of seeing what I could do at the next Olympics. So for me, it wasn't so much about I need to be the best, or I need to be the best in the world, or my goal of becoming an Olympic champion for the sake of being an Olympic champion. It was just that each of the 4 Olympics in which I competed, they all presented me with 4 different challenges. And I just kind of embraced the challenges, and the more, implausible or so-called far-fetched or lofty or whatever they seemed, the more I was driven to do them. So I kind of, after we won in Vancouver, I, went back to life, I guess. And that's when I started speaking, kind of got thrown into the speaking world and started developing that, and then was pulled back in for the Sochi Olympics. I was pulled in the year before the Sochi Olympics, except I found out I needed hip surgery. So I didn't actually compete that year. I didn't get back until the fall, right before those next Olympics. So again, one of the guys on the team kind of joked about me being like the Batman of the Olympics, where they'd ask me to come back and I would just kind of descend on the Olympic season and just kind of go and, help the team out that year to do whatever. So that's kind of what happened. And the same thing with Pyeongchang in 2018. Again, 6 months before the games. Well, they asked me a year before. I'll give them that. But I said, no, I wasn't interested in going back to compete. And then my former teammate asked if I'd go back, and I wasn't interested at all. And then 6 months before the games, I got an Instagram message from a new up and coming driver. And her message was, there's a lack of leadership in the program. And besides your former teammate, so my former teammate, who's competed in the Olympics before, not one other person in the women's program has competed in the Olympics or has even been there. So based on what I've heard about you, I think that you would be not only an asset to me and my team, but also the team as a whole, the whole team.
The entire Olympic team.
Well, the entire Canadian bobsled team, like the entire women's team, yeah. And so I was just like, man, she's now using my language in my business about impact. And it's not just about the push anymore. It's about leadership. It's about impact. It's about, elevating somebody else. So I started thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that although I wasn't motivated to go back to a 4th Olympics to just try and win a 3rd Olympic medal, I was actually motivated by the idea of helping someone else get to the Olympics and potentially win their first. So I only agreed to go back if the federation, when the Bobsled Federation agreed to support me in my decision to not push, to only push a rookie, like to only push someone who'd never competed before. So my goal wasn't to go back and, just to do everything I could to win it, to medal. My goal wasn't to get back in the Canada One sled again. My goal was, yes, to get back to be the best that I could be, but in order to help someone else with dealing with the stresses and pressures of the Olympics and that sort of thing, and help them be able to perform at their best and get to the Olympics. So it was a totally different challenge again, and I loved it.
So you didn't go back and compete with your previous teammate. You practiced, or you competed, sorry, with this
with a
new
rookie.
girl.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it
wow.
didn't have to be the girl who invited me back. And I made that clear. I said, it doesn't matter, but I'll compete with any rookies. But my goal is to help someone so that I can help them deal with the pressures and stresses of the high pressure situations and the ins and outs of the Olympics, and help get them into the mindset that it takes in order to perform under such circumstances. And my former teammate didn't need that. She'd already competed and has, 2 Olympic gold medals under her belt. And so I just wanted to help a rookie. So it was pretty, I think it was a pretty powerful message too, that a lot of people took from that. But for me, it wasn't just about, not just about the top of the podium. So it was pretty cool.
It's an unbelievably powerful message, and I'm not surprised by it, knowing you. Like, you're like one of the most selfless people I've met. And I mean, we don't know each other that well, but you just, you really come out as if like you're focused on others, not focused on yourself. And that story does not surprise me whatsoever when it comes to you. And your ability to contribute and lead and help others and support them on their path. So congratulations to you. That's tough. Like, to go, the allure of winning, being a 3-time gold medalist would be pretty tough to turn down for a lot of people.
There were moments on the tour when it was, it was very tempting, because I'm not competitive because I want to be the best or to win. I'm competitive. It's kind of the same thing at home when we're playing card games with the family or doing whatever. It's not this sore loser kind of like, I'm going to win and beat you. It's not about that. It's kind of just, it's that challenge again. Like, that 4th Olympic Games, when she first asked me to come back, I had to get on a phone call with her, because I'm like, I don't think you understand what you're asking. Like, this was in 6 months before the 2018 Olympics. So this is like August of 2017. And I hadn't done any training for 3.5 years since the Sochi Olympics. Like, I hadn't been to the gym. It wasn't training. The only time I'd been to the gym was to rehab a second hip surgery that I'd had. So the second hip surgery that I, unfortunately rehabbed like a normal person and not like an athlete. So, I was like, I don't know if my hip can even handle this. And I had just turned 39 years old. So I was like, I don't even know if what you're asking me is, you're asking me based on what you remember me being, 3.5 years ago. And she's like, don't worry. She goes, didn't you just sprain your back in the spring? Because I know you went to go see the therapist, like you flew to Calgary to see our therapist. And so I talked to him about it, and he says, oh, you'd be fine. And I'm like, oh, that's great. So here I am, like, kind of using my physical state and not knowing if I could, be as powerful or as explosive or fast or whatever. And the therapist is like, no, man, as long as we can keep her in alignment, no, she's fine. So I'm like, oh, okay. I don't even have that to fall back on. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was just doing the math in my head there. You're like, what, 44 then now?
45. Yeah.
45. Like, I honestly thought you were in your 30s when we met.
Oh, God bless you.
You're
so sweet.
For the audience, like, honestly, you have got to be you're a genetic anomaly almost. Like, it's the athleticism that you possess is pretty wild. And in your book, it's funny because you tell a story in your book about Mr.
Turtle, yeah, my coach in high school.
And you after like the awards, the final year in high school and all your awards, and you like explain how you walk into his office and you've got like a bucket load of, MVP awards and all this kind of stuff. And I just kind of giggled when I read that, going, yeah, I could see that. And
yeah, but his response to that, was, he's just kind of with a shake of his head. And it was kind of just like, oh, Heather, you have so much potential. And in my head, I'm like, that's kind of a weird thing to say. Like, why is he being so weird about this? And I don't even know how to respond. How do you respond to that? And I'm like, okay, see ya. And I was just about to leave the office. And he said, no, Heather, I don't think you understand. Potential is just talent you don't have yet. And I was like, "Bah." Like at the time, I don't think it hit me at all. But all of a sudden, when I started bobsledding, and this is years later, like I didn't start bobsledding until I was 27.
Yeah, you said it was like 10 years almost in the book, I think you
Yeah,
mentioned.
I started bobsledding just after I'd turned 27, and his voice came back, and it was all about this potential and this untapped potential. And I had avoided lifting weights my whole life until 27, and it was a really sticking point for me. It was almost something that, made me not want to do bobsledding. And I just was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to leave it all on the table. And it was all about this potential. Like, what potential do I have? And I don't know where this voice came from, out of nowhere, this situation from 10 years earlier. And, yeah, he had a very profound impact on my outlook on how I was, moving forward with that. So it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
A couple of things that actually I'd like to chat about, but I did want to ask you about that piece in the book. So it's kind of interesting that it came up this early, but and what level of impact that was, because I think there's a lot of, everyone has a certain potential in them for something, and they either can't see it or they don't harness it, or so I'd love to chat about that. And I also want to just, we can do whichever one you want first, and you had mentioned earlier in regards to working with the rookie in your fourth Olympics, and about dealing with the pressure, and being that athlete that's going to come in and use the experience, cope with pressure, because I think I think it's interesting in a lot of ways. One, it's just interesting at the level of the Olympic level, and the competitiveness and the pressure in that moment of competing, because I think it relates to everyday life when, whether it doesn't matter what career you're in or what business you own, there is always points and that you have to kind of be able to deal with the pressure, and you deal with this in your book. But I just I'd love to have a conversation about it. There's a million things that I want to talk to you about, but we can start on those two, and we'll see where it goes.
Perfect. Okay, so talking about the untapped potential piece, or the piece that Mr. Turtle kind of, I don't know, like drilled into my brain. I don't think without him even realizing it. It's a really big piece for me. And I think that a lot of times this untapped potential, it comes from different places and different sources, I guess. And some of it, right now, a lot of the clients I'm working with are clients who outwardly seem very successful. And they are very successful, but something is missing. They're not feeling overly fulfilled, or they're not happy, or they just feel like something's missing, or that life has passed them by. And a lot of times when I've looked at the whole scenario of a lot of people, most people are on autopilot in their lives. And most people are just making decisions based on momentum. And if something's taking them somewhere and they get an accolade because they're good at it, then then it's the feeling that they like that feeling, so they go in that direction. And it's not so much the activity themselves, it's where the accolades are leading them, where the praise is leading them, where the autopilot's leaving them. And this autopilot, we feel like we're so autonomous and making all these decisions on our own, but we're still making our choices within these boundaries of our direct exposures and our environments. And so I was making my decisions. People in my family, everyone, including my grandparents, had been to university. So me going to university was just in my boundary. It was in my lane. It was kind of just what was going to happen without even thinking about it. And so it was just, I didn't question it. I didn't wonder if there were any other options. It was just kind of what was going to happen. And so a lot of times we're just in whatever is dictated to us based on society, but mostly our immediate environments. And what we pursue is what we have been exposed to, and knowing for sure that that's possible. So if your parent was a doctor, then it's possible to be a doctor. If your uncle was a I don't know, an astronaut, then you could probably go and become an astronaut. If your auntie is an Olympic gold medalist, then you know at least going to the Olympics is an option, and even doing well in it is an option. So it's whatever is in your environment, which is probably why I never started pursuing sports or lifting weights, like, and taking sports seriously until I was 27, because I didn't grow up with people around me training to go to the Olympics. Like, Olympians were TV people. They were not everyday normal people like I considered myself to be. So it's not, it's not that I said, oh, I could never do that. It's that it didn't occur to me as being an option. Like, I just was like, well, I'm going to get a master's degree. I'm going to be an occupational therapist. I'm going to still live a, relatively successful life, like, by all accounts, but just within my lane. And I also grew up in an academic family, which is why pursuing that academic career was just the norm. It was just going with the flow. I wasn't breaking free from anything. So that's kind of why, even at university, I played 3 varsity sports at university. And, it still never occurred to me to pursue anything else. I didn't even know we had a national women's rugby team until I played in a tournament, and I was suddenly scouted and selected to go to a national camp. And I was like, we have a national women's rugby team? Like, I didn't even know we had a national women's rugby team. And it was the same thing as being inducted into the World Rugby Hall of Fame. I didn't know there was a World Rugby Hall of Fame. So I feel very fortunate in a way that coming at it at at an older age, I guess, 27, kind of starting this thing, I was able to make value-based decisions. I was able to look at things from a different point of view and not feel pressured into doing things the way that all these other athletes had done it, or, be pressured to move to somewhere that I really didn't want to go or do, and make decisions based on life and not just this kind of momentum and pressure of doing things a certain way. And I feel very fortunate about that. And I've been that whole experience has afforded me a very, very different and unique perspective that I've been able to share with with parents. I mean, I'm not a parent. I'm a kick-ass auntie, but I'm not a parent. But I get parenting questions a lot, because they are parenting athletes. They're parenting kids who are in sports, and they're wanting their kids. Some of them are wanting them just to be happy, and some of them are, based on questions, are very clearly wanting their kids to be successful. And sometimes I cringe when I hear a question, knowing that, or having a very keen sense that the goal is more the parent's goal than the goal of the child. And, I try and redirect and reframe and, that sort of thing. But it's just been very, very interesting. But that potential, our potential, is often limited by our environments and our direct exposures. Our potential is also limited by self-sabotage. So self-sabotage is a big, big, big one. And I've kind of, I guess, narrowed the self-sabotage down into assumptions, self-limiting beliefs, and fears. And all of those kind of accumulate into whatever array of excuses we want, but they kind of boil down to assumptions, self-limiting beliefs, and fears. We make so many assumptions on a daily basis. We make the assumptions that, that person, I'm not their type, or I'm not qualified enough. Well, maybe nobody else applied. We're just selling ourselves short by applying these assumptions without actually challenging them. Our self-limiting beliefs are rooted in stories that may have been true when we were younger, but also may not have been true. And we've been telling ourselves that, or someone else told us that. And it's just been this voice in our head forever that we can't do something, that we're not that kind of person. We, whatever these limited beliefs that we hold, and those need to be challenged. And then the fear that we have is actually not the fear of failure. It's the fear of what we assume failure will bring. And when that boils down to it, it is, and again, that's an assumption, what we assume failure is going to bring. And it is ridicule, rejection, isolation, judgment. The biggest thing we fear most of all is the judgment of other people. And it is not even so much failure that brings on that judgment. Sometimes it's even the pursuit of something that that we're worried will have a impact from other people. Like if someone hears that you're trying to pursue to be this, next level author or podcaster or whatever, like whoever you tell that to, or you may not even want to pursue it in fear of what people will say about you and how they will judge you for even trying or thinking you're that good. And that was something that stopped me in my tracks a lot. Having grown up in a small town, it was that judgment because I overheard someone in high school, someone I was, hanging out with, we were waiting for the bell to ring, and I hear this girl saying to us, referring to someone else in the corner, saying, look at her, she thinks she's so much better than everyone else. And that girl was just minding her own business, showing like a dance move to her friend. And that comment didn't affect her because she didn't hear it. But I somehow absorbed that without even realizing it. And so from then on, I downplayed everything. I downplayed my sporting abilities. I downplayed, I played my ass off on the field, but I certainly wasn't showing up early. I certainly wasn't staying later, and I certainly wasn't doing anything extra. And I certainly wasn't, going and training to try and be better at my sport. Every sport I played was just for fun. And I used the excuse that doing any extra training or lifting weights would make it a job. It would, turn it into work, and I'm just here to have fun and social and that sort of thing.
That's the story you told yourself.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So it wasn't until later when it actually boiled down to me realizing that I was doing that almost self-preservation. I self-sabotaged for sure, but it was in a self-preservation mode where I didn't want to be judged for thinking I was better than anyone else or thinking I was, that much better. It's still a battle. It's still an internal voice that I fight for now. I fight with, to try and correct and try and reframe and that sort of thing. And those kind of stories stay with us for sure.
They do. And I would love for you to repeat that quote, because when I read it, I was like, okay, that's, people will, often say, when you talked about being afraid to fail, I'm not afraid to fail. But you succinctly, that quote was really hit me. So I would love for you to repeat it to the audience so that they get it, because what they really, to really think about, what they believe is going to happen. If you could repeat that quote, I think it would be super powerful. It's
not actually failure that we fear. It is what we assume failure will bring.
Right.
And that is potentially, for example, like if you've only ever received or felt like you've received love or affection from a parent only when you've done well, then you may not actually try something, because if you fail, then you may get a negative reaction from a parent. Like you may just have been taught that failing will bring on negative consequences or whatever. And so those are the kind of things that we internalize, but they are these assumptions that we've held on to, or we assume that we're going to be judged by people, or we assume that we're going to get a negative reaction. Some of those assumptions may be true, but some of them may just be things that we are holding on to that are definitely holding us back. So part of my, when I'm working with people, it is any assumptions, if you can catch yourself, like call yourself out and just say, are you sure?
Is it true?
Like, are you sure? Really?
Yeah.
Like, are you really sure? Like, did that really happen? And it's, it can come in any everyday scenario. It happened with a story with my parents, with a bucket list trip they wanted to take. And just asking those questions, like, she's like, oh, it's sold out, or it's too late. Are you sure? It would be sold out by now. Are you sure? Well, Heather, it's a big deal. Like, it would be Mom, are you sure? Like, did you check? Well, no. Well, we checked and it was still available. And like this whole, all of these things, and assuming, well, it'd be more fun to go with someone, another couple. Well, why don't you go with your aunt and uncle? Like my aunt and uncle, your sister and brother-in-law, they'd be so fun, but they can't go this year. Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, they're doing their big trip across the Northern Passage. Oh my gosh, they're doing that over the Christmas holidays? No, they're doing that in the fall, but they're not going to want to take 2 big trips in a year. Are you sure? Like, you didn't ask them because this just happened right now. So we called and they ended up going. Like we stop ourselves from these things before we even let them unfold, before we give them even a chance. So that self-sabotage prevents people from going from having this dream or this thought in the back of their head it prevents them from going from dreaming to planning. And it also, there's some people make it to the planning phase and they have all these really great plans, but they never pursue it. And again, the same self-sabotage prevents you from going from that planning phase to the actual pursuing phase. And then it's the self-sabotage rears its ugly head again within the pursuing phase when you get confronted with actual external obstacles. Like the internal obstacles is our self-sabotage. The external obstacles would be like injuries or a financial crisis or a pandemic or, getting fired or whatever, all these external challenges that we have. And that again could be our self-sabotage, assuming that we can't overcome it, or self-limiting beliefs saying that we can't overcome it, or, oh my gosh, who am I to think that I can actually overcome? Like self-sabotage can do that. But those are the obstacles that we at least want to be able to physically feel like we can challenge. But we have to get through our self-sabotage in all those steps before we even start pursuing the goals that we really want.
So a couple of questions on that, and I want to get back to the rugby. Rugby was one of the things I wanted to bring up, but I don't want to leave this because I think it's very powerful, and I'm really curious what you did, through your experiences. I'm just going to kind of sum up what I think I heard, and then you could correct me if I'm wrong in any of these areas. But really, you talked about, being on autopilot and that, we're prone to our environment. It's funny that you say it's like, I know so many professional hockey players that their sons are professional hockey players or football players. And it's amazing to see, like, once you pointed that out, it's so true. It's so predominant. And I think that in this day and age with technology, being such an influence on what will happen in the future, there are going to be a lot of jobs, a lot of businesses, a lot of careers that are going to be needed people are going to have to change their psychology, and they're going to have to change exactly what you're talking about, which is that self-sabotage. And I think you pointed out the two pieces that I picked up were fear and limiting beliefs. And to me, like, I throw that kind of in a bit of a bucket of like the need to innovate, and that really trying to recreate that compelling future, if you will, and being able to innovate it. And these are like the things that you're talking about. And I think it's super, super powerful. And I think it's going to be even more powerful because of technology, because we've got like, I don't know how many people I know, how many young people I know that I've met who's, it's like, well, what are you going to school for? Well, I'm going to school to be a teacher. Oh, really? What drove you to that? Well, my mom's a teacher, my dad's a teacher, or whatever. And it's like, it's kind of like what we did. And then, is teaching going to be, what you saw, what teaching has been for the last 40 years for your parents, or 30 years, or whatever it's been. And what it will be in the next 20 years are probably going to be two completely different things. And I always say to, people who are going to school to be a teacher, I'm like, I hope you're taking technology courses.
Yeah.
Because that's what that job's going to probably turn into. So, and I not to get onto that topic, but I do think your core context of, this self-sabotage, this fear, this limiting beliefs. And then I love what you kind of put together on the three pieces of dream, plan, and pursue. And so, could you share some of the tools and the specifics about how you kind of overcame, the practice of that? Like it's one thing to go, okay, yeah, maybe I have a fear, maybe I have a limiting belief, but what do you do about it when you realize you have it? And so was there a time in your past where you looked and went, yeah, I have to like strategize or plan and then pursue the action to overcome those limiting beliefs?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate, me going to the dreaming to the pursuing phase, the kind of getting past the voice of, look at her, she thinks she's so much better than anyone else. Like that kind of voice, like, who do I think I am? Like, who am I to be able to accomplish this or even to pursue this? I guess it has, that all kind of evolved later, obviously, like I said, at 27. And I think, to be honest, that it helped me because the goal was so big that I don't know that I was even necessarily expecting that I was going to make it. It was just that it was a challenge and I challenged myself, which is another thing I want to talk about. I hope we're not going to jump all over the place. But when I'm working with people, I try and get them to set, we kind of draw out what their goals are, what they really want to achieve, what they want to achieve, not what they think they're supposed to be achieving, but what they really want to achieve. But we actually pick an even bigger goal. Like what would be even bigger, like what would be bigger and better than that? And regardless of what it is, if it seems implausible or lofty or whatever those words are, you know, that people kind of throw out there, it is challenging yourself, setting that goal not as a binary outcome. So instead of it being a binary outcome where you've either succeeded or you've failed, that's literally your two options. You either achieve your goal or you don't. Instead of doing that, because if a goal is so big, if it's something you really, really, really want to do, like if you want to be the number one podcaster on the planet, you know, that's awesome. That's great. So, you know, but if you're just like, oh, well, that's, you know, for someone starting out, I mean, you're already very established, but for someone starting out, they might be like, oh, that's never going to happen. So when they look at that as a goal, the likelihood of them achieving that is probably not so high. So they're less likely to pursue it if those are the only two options they have. Right. Whereas if they set a goal as a spectrum and they look at that saying, yeah, well, that might be, yeah, it's probably unlikely, but I just sure as hell want to see how close I can get. Then it becomes, you've kind of gamified it. You've set a challenge, and almost like every time you come up with a roadblock saying, yeah, but I just want to see how close I can get to that. So how can I do that? It doesn't become this thing where all of a sudden, if you had it set as a binary outcome, then this thing comes and blocks you and you're like, see, this is like, I knew this was going to happen and that's why I can't do it. Whereas if it's a challenge, if you've set it as a spectrum and a challenge, then all you're doing is just challenging yourself to see, can you get past this? Like how close can you actually get? Like how far can you go? That how close can I get? That statement is not only good for that and for kind of getting past those things to see, you know, to achieve your goal, to get close to your goal. The thing is, the closer you get, the more you're like, oh my gosh, maybe it is real. Like maybe this can happen. Like the closer you get, it's just that you have to get on that. Like you have to get on the spectrum in order to kind of overcome these things and be like, oh my gosh, maybe it is possible. Or, oh my God, maybe I actually will be top 5 in the world. Like, is that shitty? No. Like, okay, this is the thing. We're limiting ourselves because of a yes or no, or a success or failure binary outcome outlook. So that comment, though, getting back to that comment, how close can I get? That is also really important because it also disempowers the naysayers and re-empowers us. So no matter what your goal is, there are going to be people who are like, oh, really? Like, you really think you're going to achieve that? Or you, like, we all know the comments or the eye rolls or all those things, right? And you're even that like, oh, who do you think you are? Like that comment. And whether it's from somebody else or whether it's your own inner demon voice saying that, all you have to do is say, you know what? I might not get there, but I just want to see how close I can get. And that, then they have nothing else to say. There is nothing else to say. You've acknowledged the fact that not achieving that big goal is a possibility, and you're okay with that. That you have just decided that you just want to, you know, I just want to see how close I can get to that. I want to see how close I can get. Yeah, I'm sure I might not be able to go to the Olympics. I just had hip surgery yesterday, but I'm going to try. I just want to see how close I can get, or whatever. It's a very, very easy statement to either say to someone else, to say to yourself, or whatever. And it disempowers and quiets those voices, and it re-empowers you to pursue something that you actually really want to pursue.
And was this a technique that you legit actually tried yourself in the beginning, like, because you just mentioned about the hip surgery 5 months before you went to the Olympics, which everybody,
Not
like,
five,
to me,
not
that's
5 months. I started bobsledding 5 months before my first one. The hip
sorry.
surgery was 7 months before I had to be on the rugby field for the Rugby World Cup, and 9 months before I had to qualify for the national team for the bobsledding. Yeah.
Oh, just that.
Yeah. Just want to be clear. 5 months.
Thank you. But honestly,
I
like,
wouldn't want
that's
people to
insane.
think it was 5.
But it's insane, like, really. But thank you for clarifying, because I missed that when I hit it. But it's insane that for me to even comprehend that, I'm like, holy shit! Like, I mean, I'm not an athlete. I'm not like a competitive athlete like you were, but I see myself. I certainly have an athlete identity, along with a bunch of other identities that I own for myself. But and I just can't think, like, holy shit, that must have been unbelievable. But did you really utilize that process, or is that something you learned through the process? I'm just out of curiosity.
So I'll tell you that in a second, but you said you just because you touched on the word identity, the comment of who am I to think that I whatever, that is all based on how you identify yourself, your identity, how you identify yourself, but also how you think that other people see you. And so identity, how the words you use to identify yourself are also part of can be part of self-sabotage.
100%.
They can also be empowering, because I'm the kind of person who does this, as opposed to, people like me don't do that. Well, what does that mean? You've just literally put yourself in a box, and you have limited your potential. Like, you have literally squashed your potential based on putting yourself in a box. So I just wanted to touch on that.
No, it's huge. Thank you for that, because, and this is, I think, important for the listeners to hear, because the most significant force in the human psychology is to remain congruent with how you identify yourself. And that is such a critical piece, because if people are struggling, you can literally go to your identity, and how you see yourself is critical. And Stephen Covey years ago had a way that he used to call them roles, not identities, but he used to teach a process where, if you want to create a new identity, a big part of, or new role is how he used to teach it, but is writing your eulogy, forward forecast your eulogy in whatever area. So as a father, what would I want my children to say? What would I want my wife to say? What would I want my business partners or my employees to say? What would I want my friends to say? And you really drill down and create that identity or that eulogy about, hey, I would want them to say this. I would want them to say that, and get very clear on that. And that's a great way to begin to shift and readjust your identity. So yeah, thank you for acknowledging that, because I think it's a huge piece for people.
Yeah. It's also, Todd Herman also wrote a book. I think that's his name. And it's, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can remember the name of the book, but it is definitely about identity. And it's about stepping into, stepping into an identity to fulfill. It's almost like a fake it till you make it kind of thing, but you're pulling pieces of someone else's identity whom you admire, and you're adopting those, and you are, and then after a while you realize that is who you are. That is who you are now. Like, you're not pretending. You're not pretending to be this person, but you kind of step into this. So identity is a huge.
Is that huge. Alter ego?
Alter ego.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was going to say ego, but I'm like, I don't know. It's not just ego. Alter ego. Yeah. Yeah. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
So let's flip back to, did you use,
yes.
Go ahead.
So you were going to say, did I use,
did you use that process, or is it a process that you developed through?
So it is a process that I kind of somehow stumbled on in rugby, and I realized that I was going through a really, really hard time, because I'll paint the picture. I'll kind of put myself in it. So after winning in Vancouver in 2010, so I had competed, so dialing back a little bit, the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup for 15s is always at the end of the summer of the same year, right after we've just done the Winter Olympics. So it's always the same year. So every 4 years, it's double whammy Olympics and, for bobsledding and rugby in the same year. So that's what I did in 2006. And then in 2006, for rugby, I was the leading try scorer at the Rugby World Cup. And then 4 years later, I am back and then we won in Vancouver for bobsledding. But then because I was away that whole year, and I think I'd broken my shoulder the year before, so I didn't play rugby the whole summer before. And then that winter, it was it was crazy. So I hadn't been with the rugby program for a little bit. And then after the Olympics in February 2010, I went back and I missed the tours during the winter because I was gone for bobsledding, and went to a basketball, not anything to do with basketball, rugby camp, like a training camp, in the spring. And then it was kind of a training camp / tryout / had a couple of kind of test matches against the United States, kind of to see where people were at and everything. So, it was a very weird position to be in, coming back into a team sport where most of these girls had been training together for the last few years, like on and off pretty much, but pretty consistently for the last few years. And I was coming in and potentially, taking someone's spot. Right. And I mean, I did the same with bobsledding, and that's what sport is, but it still doesn't feel great being that person coming in. Well, at least not for me. For some people, they may be like, yeah, I just walked it, like whatever. I don't know. But for me, it was very hard to realize that I was taking someone's spot who had been there anyway. And there were a few people on the team, people with whom I hadn't played before, and they weren't making it exactly easy because I was maybe taking their friend's spot, someone that they had gotten close with for a while. And, they believed in that person was loyal and committed to the team. And I apparently wasn't. And,
you're the unknown and you're
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up, scoring few tries against the United States in those games and all these things. But all of a sudden we had another tournament in the summer, or training camp in the summer. And then I went to the World Cup. I went to the World Cup, and this time it was in England, and we're on a bus, and I was paying no attention to social media. Wasn't as big back then, but it was coming, and there were chat rooms and all of these different things apparently. And there was a girl on the team who I think thought that she was doing me a favor or being nice. I'm not sure, but she basically said, "Oh, Heather, about those chat rooms, don't worry, I defended you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Oh, well, there's this chat room all about it's a rugby forum getting ready for the World Cup, and they're debating whether or not you should be on the team." I'm like, "Okay, great. We're here. We're in England right now. The tournament starts next week. Thanks for that. That's awesome." So of course, even the fact that she defended me, all of a sudden there's this seed of doubt in my brain. Some people are just like, well, she hasn't been played for the last couple of years. And someone's like, she was the leading try scorer 4 years ago. And someone's like, yeah, that was 4 years ago. How do we know she's still good? And then someone else piped up, well, she just scored against the States twice. And but it was this back and forth. She shouldn't be there just because she won a gold medal for bobsled. It was all just I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I am only here for media because I just won in Vancouver? All of these things start flying around in my brain.
Makes sense.
And of course I'm there, and the next day I'm doing an interview with Total Rugby, which is a rugby TV channel show over big in the UK. And so they're coming and they're filming the trainings and they're doing all this stuff and they're doing this interview, and I've got these comments in the back of my brain. And it wasn't until in the middle of the interview when it just came out. It literally came out, and it just said, and I just said, you know what? The fact that I acknowledged out loud in this interview that I had my own doubts about whether I should be there or not. I said, there are people out there who are questioning whether I should be here. And I said, and they're not thinking anything that I haven't thought myself, but I have to trust that I'm here for a reason. And whether that's being the best water girl on the team, then that's
You
what,
said that in the interview?
yeah, I said, well, then that's what my role is. Or I said, if I actually get the privilege of stepping out on that field, then I will try and do the job, my job, the best that I can do. But I have to at least trust that the coaches saw a purpose and a reason for me being here, for whatever that is. And so I can't even remember how it was framed and all that stuff, but it was from that point on that I realized how impactful and detrimental naysayers can be, and how they can really, because again, like I said, leading up to it, social media wasn't that big. And I didn't grow up with naysayers in my family. Very fortunate to not have had naysayers in my family. And so it was a very new, all of a sudden, like, I'm like, oh my God, what, like, where's all this doubt and this craziness coming from? And so it was at that point when I realized, being like, yeah, I might not do that, but I'm going to, to acknowledge the fact that I might not get on the field, or that I might not be the best, or that I might not be whatever, but I'm here for a reason, or I'm owning this journey and I'm owning this, whatever. I found that very powerful. And then, so when I was working with clients, we kind of came up with this thing, being like, you know what? Yeah, I might not get there. I might not recover from hip surgery. I might not be able to get my book published. I might not be able to do whatever, but you know what? I just want to see how close I can get. And that's it. And so disempowers the naysayers, re-empowers you to do something that you want to do, that you actually are pursuing because you want to do it. And then that's
Yeah, that doesn't mean you're trying any less. It just is. Yeah, no, I like the idea of it. Sorry, I have one quick question. How many tries did you score over in England? Like, were you the lead try scorer?
I was. I was
Is that not, at some level, do you not feel like, to the naysayers, like, up yours? You probably don't, but
I don't say up yours, but I do have to say that there is a comfort in proving people wrong. I find, very good way to put it. Yeah, I find that I find that by doing that, maybe it's making people rethink what's possible. Like, why are you so quick to put limitations on what people are able to do? And I think that's why I was partly enjoyed going back to the Olympics when I was 39, after not training for 3.5 years and having 2 hip surgeries and whatever, is just kind of not being like, haha, I did it. Like, but also giving other people we talk about representation, right? So I'm just like, I'm 39. I'm like, just don't sell yourself short. Don't just stop doing something, or don't try something because you're 39 or because you're 45 or because you're 27. Like, I had a woman come up to me after one of my speaking engagements, and she said, you started when you were 27. She goes, I'm 27 now. And I
and I feel old.
Well, she was basically like,
Yeah.
I put one of my dreams on the shelf a long time ago. And she goes, and I don't know why I did that. And now I'm like, I'm going to dust it off. Like, and I'm like, go dust it off. Who knows? Who knows whether you'll make it or not? But just like, if it's something you wanted to do it. Like, anyway, so that's kind of been the best part about my story, or my journey, is being able to show people that there are other ways of doing something. It doesn't have to be done like the way that it's always been done before. But also I just don't want people to sell themselves short. Like, I feel like that is my reason for being, like, is just don't.
It's your purpose.
Yeah. Just don't sell yourself short.
Well, that's why your book is like perfectly titled, Redefining Realistic. Or in my head, it's like, your whole life has been about redefining the limits, to be able to go to the Olympics at 39 and do all those things. And I think it's wildly impressive. And you do it without ego, which we're going to get into later, because I have some questions about that. But you do, like, you really do. You really, really, really do without ego. And
part of that's my parents, though. My parents, my mom told me, long time ago, like I think it was after maybe my first gold medal, I don't remember, but she kind of made a point and she said, just so you know, if I ever think you're getting too big for your britches, it doesn't matter how old you are, I'll still find a way to ground you. Like it was just, and by like
Good for them.
yeah. Oh gosh. Yes. Like it just,
we don't have enough parents that are doing that kind of stuff nowadays. So in my opinion,
no, but I feel you're right. I feel that in some ways, there are some things that parents could be doing, but I also think that they're growing up in a time that has very different challenges. So it's not an easy.
Yeah, no,
I'm not,
and I'm not making a judgment about parents, but I am. But we have, and actually, Tennille and I just talked about this the other day about, whether we were too soft with kids or with too hard in some areas, too soft in other areas, and being a parent is so difficult, especially now and my kids are 18 and 22, so soon to be 19, and I can't imagine doing it now. It'd be even more difficult.
No,
so
it's not.
You mentioned something earlier that I just kind of loved, and you had mentioned when you were talking about goals, you said you used the words gamify your goals, and I really love and I don't know if that's how you typically kind of use that phrase, but it made me think about, as you said it, I was like, wow, that is such an interesting phrase regarding goals, because I think about our talking about kids nowadays, it's like they get into online gaming or just gaming, and if you told them you are going to fail and die 67,000 times in this game, they'd probably be like, fuck, I'm not playing that game. And yet in life, they struggle to kind of gamify their life, if they will, going,
exactly.
Hey, I can go in here and I can try 1, 2, 3, 20, 50, 100 times and fail, which is what they're doing every day, but they don't translate that to their life. And that was my takeaway when you had said,
yes,
gamify
and that's 100%.
your goals.
That's 100% how I meant that, because I actually used this concept in a keynote I did just before, at the end of last year. And it was, I brought in this concept of gamifying your goals. And it is, the whole point is when you're playing a video game, like whether you're a gamer or not, everybody kind of knows the concept of video games. The whole point is to get to the next level, and then to somehow get to the next level, and somehow get to the next level. And when you die off, you've got however many tries. And when you die off, are you just like never playing the game again? Or are you going to try it again? Well, most people are trying it again. And this time they will use they'll pick different armor. They'll pick a different car. They'll pick different, ammunition, or they'll pick a different route. They'll strategize a different route to get there. Instead of going over, they'll try under. Instead of going through the mountains, they'll go, they'll go swim underwater and get some point. Like they'll try something different next time, even though their goal is the same. They'll try a different way of getting there. And that is the whole point. Why are we giving up so easily on things that are actually important to us? Or are they important to us? And maybe that's the question. Maybe we're pursuing things because we think we're supposed to pursue them. But for the things that are really important to us, if you gamify it, if it doesn't work the first time, try it a different way. Try using a different tool, try getting a different resource, try, it's so applicable to our lives in terms of taking things, whether it's our life, our business, whatever, taking things to the next level. And then you do the same thing again. You try, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and take things to another level. And you use the same process. Like you try and you try again, and you try with different tools, and you go and educate yourself and get a different skill, and you maneuver and you make your way up, and it's a phenomenal comparison.
Yeah, and it circles back to what you were talking about earlier when you said we're, I don't want to say, you didn't say product of our environment, but you make decisions based on the environment that you're in, and so you become whatever. pipe fitter, teacher, whatever it is, entrepreneur. Like I kind of did it. That's what my dad owned his own business. My mom and dad owned their own business. I own my own business. They were in business together with their, as husband and wife. I'm in business with my wife. I was in business with my ex-wife. Like
Yeah.
actually, I never really thought about that. Like, oh, I'm going to be on the couch of some psychologist tomorrow. So, but it's true. I think it's a great takeaway, and I hope the audience, and that'd be a great point for parents who are listening to this, which obviously we have a lot of parents, but when you're dealing with your kids, like gamify their goals. It's actually outstanding. I did think, one of the things I would say about your book was I felt like you have there's, you chunk it down into these 3 sections. I wasn't going to go here, but you were I think it's shift your perspective, seize your potential, and own your story. Yeah, own your story. And I just thought, you could have written 3 books.
I know. And actually that's what the publisher told me too. And I was just like, but each section, and I think that may be a possibility down the road to actually extrapolate and expand on each section of the book, or in some way, because I do feel like the more I've gone into coaching and the more research I've done and whatever, there is so much to expand on each section. But I felt like that was the only book I was ever going to write. So for me, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I get it all in here? And it was probably, if I'm really take a hard look at it, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like, I've climbed the highest mountain in Antarctica. I have 2 Olympic gold medals, World Rugby Hall of Fame, but writing that book was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, because I wanted to balance. I didn't want to write an autobiography, and I wanted it to be something that was going to be transformational, help people, like a personal, professional development book. But I also knew that because of my career, my sports career, that there were some people out there who wanted the autobiography, who wanted the sports stuff, or who wanted a bit of behind the scenes to figure out whatever. So it was a really interesting challenge to be pulling in stories, stories of my journey and of my overcoming challenges and of my, whatever, and putting them in the book in places, even though the stories weren't chronological. But the stories had to be told in a way that didn't rely on a previous story that was actually being told later at the end of the book. And so it had to kind of be done in a way that fit with the messaging. And the stories I told were only stories to highlight the messages that I thought would help people, take things to the next level or discover what they're truly capable of. So that was the point. But you're absolutely right. It's there's a lot in there.
I would honestly, I would encourage you to, go back and dig in deeper in some of these things, because it was such good content. And I would encourage, while I'm using the word encourage, I'll formally say I would encourage people to buy your book.
That's very sweet.
Because it's really good. And you have a fascinating life. Like, it's really crazy. What you've accomplished. And I think when I was kind of, like I said, I didn't read it word for word, but I did get through, a lot of the content. But I kind of, as I was reading it, it was harnessing potential would be kind of one of the big things that was hit me. And I think, it's a great book for anybody to read, first of all, but especially if you're stuck and you really need that, not pump up, but just context to really, your life, your story, what you have to say inside the book about mindset and limiting beliefs and facing adversity and, embracing challenge. It's you've kind of got it all in there, and it's a really
that means a lot, Dwayne.
Mindful and healthy book for people to read. And I sincerely shit, I'm almost about here to cry. You doing really cool stuff for people.
Thank you. That means the world to me.
Yeah. And you're such a symbol for women. I was actually thinking, as you were talking earlier, I was You know what I need to do? It was one thing you've kind of inspired me to do is, and I don't know, I'll have to check with Heather, not you, Heather, our producer, but I would love to have a panel of like, you know, powerful women on the podcast. You know, so far I've been able to do a podcast with every third episode is a woman.
Oh, wow.
I know more guys than I know women, and everybody is like somebody I know, that like I haven't, you know, I've never reached out. I've got a bit of a fear of putting somebody on the podcast that I don't know, you know, just because,
well, it's your podcast.
Yeah,
it's your
authenticity and integrity and is kind of the biggest thing. And I don't monetize this podcast. Like I'm not here to make money. I don't sell advertising on it. I really want to affect, you know, people's lives. I know I'm not affecting people's lives, but I'm bringing people to the forefront.
You are. That is the big part. Without you, then our messages wouldn't be heard by your followers. So you are affecting people's lives big time. Yeah.
And I think it really relates with you too, because like, you know, as you said earlier in the podcast, it's like, you know, you saw yourself as just like, well, being an Olympian is for somebody else.
Yeah.
Like that's not,
those are TV people.
Yeah. Those are TV people. Yeah. Those are like real athletes, like the Tom Brady's or the, you know, whatever of the world. And it's like, I'm not that guy or I'm not that girl. And so I think it's like, that's one of the kind of theories of the podcast is to bring people who are just like kind of still grinding it out every single day.